Good evening, snipers. Welcome back to Sniper Sunday. Hope you're all well. Hope you all had a great weekend and ready to get back into the thick of things. So, going to dive straight in. We've got loads and loads to cover today. I'm going to look at some of the trades from last week. And as you know, we've been looking at like nearly 20 pairs. There's lots and lots of opportunities on the horizon. So, I want to go over them. Not too much detail on some. I want to sort of give you a little bit of an idea of what we may be looking at on some pairs, and then we can monitor it over the next few days because there is a lot. Now, first off, just have a quick review of last week. So last week we ended 1.5% profit for the week, which is good. Not a bad week for the very first week back in January. Now, obviously, where we had been in more profit, Euro USD short trade was in about 2% profit at one point. Then we took 1% profit as we took some money off the table, took some profit off the table when the war news came out, and also likewise with USD CAD. We were up 2-3% on that, especially if you got trades from the bottom of the sniper zones, and yeah, we took 1.5% on that. Where that actually did go on to make about 5-6% if we had held that trade. But we do not worry about that. What's great to see is the analysis playing out as perfect and as explained. That's the main thing, to see that the actual analysis is playing through, and we just know that we can catch these trades on another day. Last week was quite unlucky for us. As I said, we had the US and Iran situation thrown into the mix late in or early in the Asian session, so late at night in the UK. And yeah, it just disrupted the sort of trading week. This week now we haven't got much fundamentals, so it should be a quite technical week. And what I mean by that is when we don't have a lot of fundamentals, we do have some, but when we don't have loads and loads of fundamentals, often we see the technicals playing out quite nicely because there's not too much to disrupt it. But of course, we need the fundamentals to actually make it move. So, as I said, I'm going to run over those trades that we took last week. But on hindsight, what we can look back, I always say this for learning purposes. Remember, guys, this is mainly or hugely educational to learn here on a daily and weekly basis. If you look back at last week's Sniper Sundays and where we're at now, we can see on 19 pairs, we've nearly more or less followed exactly what was said in the analysis. So not only do you have the trades that I give out during the day, you can also take my analysis on all these other pairs, use it along with your own, and take your own trades. So Euro USD, as I said, I'm going to run over quickly the trades that we took last week. We had a really nice trade on this one. It explained that we took a trade from this Fibonacci retracement. So we had the high to the low, A to the B. We had the C retracement to the 61.8% golden retracement level. We had a lovely short from there, lovely sniper entry. Where was our stop loss here? If I can remember, I think it was 35. And then we had a nice move down. So came down to see where we hit the Fibonacci extension, came down, hit our target, and hit a nice 2.5%. But unfortunately, we had to take the profit a little bit early. We took profit at 1%. We didn't want this to go back up to the upside, hit our stop loss at break even, and then drop down. So we took a nice 1% profit on this. Where we had the news, where we had the US news come out, it looked like this could have popped up a bit higher, maybe even tapped our stop loss at break even. And where we had taken 1%, if that did happen, we could have taken another short trade. But it just so happened that it can continue to push lower. As I said, however, what we can see is we have played out to my analysis. Now, we have this inner trend line on the 4-hour, and we do have this trend line that I've been looking out for price also to come out and test. Now, we have taken a long trade on Euro USD, played about on Friday, but we can see here, on the daily chart, we've got 0.1, 0.2, looking for possible 0.3 in the future. But we have this inner trend line where we had 0.1, 0.2, we broke that. Now, there's a few reasons that we can look at here. But what we can see is, on this pair, I do still think that we're going to come out and come to this level longer term, that we could push out down to here and fulfill this area before, like I've been saying, to then go higher. But remember, these are long-term projections. So a lot of the long-term projections that I gave last week's Sniper Sundays, and I think maybe the last Sniper Sundays before that, is like what I've said about short-term gold and stuff like that. These are all very like medium to long term. So there's a lot of twists and turns that can happen in the market beforehand, to try and trick people. So what I can see here, or what I think we will be seeing from here, is trend line strategy. We can see daily breakout candle. If we do just highlight that, you can see next day doji candle hasn't been able to break. Next candle has pushed down lower. What do we often see, guys? I want to cover this on Thursday when it actually happened. As I always say, if we're going to turn around, we're going to have a reversal. We nearly always see a push down and take out the previous low. That's why you have to have a little bit of a room for your stop loss. So you can see here, we made a low, then came down, made one more low, bringing in short sellers, and then we made this really nice bullish turnaround. So at the moment, what I can see here is we are coming back up to the back of this broken trend line, as you can see here. But with this nice 4-hour bullish candle that we saw on Friday, this nice 4-hour bullish candle, it shows the sort of intent of the bulls to push back up, and that they have some strength and they're going to try and make a move back up higher. Now we just remove this out of the way. You can also see that, like explained last week, we have hit the first extension on the Fibonacci. So A, B, C, D extension has been hit. So now this means that C becomes a new A, and if we may come back up and make a new retracement in order to push back down lower. Because on the downtrend, low, low, lower high, lower low, what do we need to do? We need to make a lower high. So here, C becomes the new A, come down, D becomes the new B, and we could push up here and tap this 38, 50, or 61.8%, or even all as high as 78% before retracing back down to the downside. Now, we have caught the very, very bottom of this move. I do believe we're going to see a move up higher. But I do think it's short term. I don't think it's going to be the move up that we're looking for yet, and it may just trick people in. We're seeing a weaker US dollar, but which I'll come to in a minute. On the US dollar is how weak we're going to see this. So I'm glad that we're in a short trade, because we may see the US dollar just weaken a little bit and then push up, or we could see the US dollar actually push quite further down. We will have to see. We never know 100% what's going to happen. So this is why hedge trades are often good as well, guys. For instance, if you had a short, some of you actually had this. I reposted a picture of one of this. One of you in the group sent it to me. Having a short trade here and having a long trade here. Obviously taking some profit from the short trade, but now once this goes up in enough profit, you also take profit from the long trade. And now whatever way the market goes, you'll be in a good position. So for instance, if this does actually continue to weaken, the US dollar weakens, and we see a push up higher, then we have still caught the bottom. But at the moment, what I'm looking at is this pushing up higher, continuing the weakness on the US dollar, and pushing up into sort of these regions where you can see we're starting to form this sort of head and shoulders formation. We'll come back up into this resistance. Once we get up into this resistance, then I will be looking for a pushback down into this sort of into this region where we can see we've got support, and we also have that third touch of the trend line. We could also break that, as I mentioned last week in Sniper Sundays, push down a little bit lower, make it equal higher low here before the bigger push back up. But again, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it and not look too far ahead. I do see a push up here. I do like this 4-hour bullish candle. We're long now from the bottom of this. Are we looking to see if we do push back down? I will let you know if there's new entries on this as well. It could be, as we're playing around here, that we could come back down and actually possibly hit our stop loss at break even as we come back down to this level for us to then take a long trade again, and we might create a sort of inverse head and shoulders. But at the moment, we have had this nice 4-hour bullish candle, and I am looking for this to move up higher. So in sort of oversight on this is that we're looking for this to, in general, we're looking at this to push up higher, to then push lower, and then longer term higher once again. Euro GBP, highlighted this last week that we were just rejecting this trend line. We sort of pushed down, pushed up, pushed down. It's been really, really boring. Not really much happening on this just yet. But I still believe that we're going to see Euro GBP come down a little bit lower and come down to around the 0.8400 level. It's a sort of strong, might have to come back to this one, guys. It's a strong daily push up here. I think once we have that retracement, we're going to see a strong push back up to the upside and see this push up here, this bullish this really big strong push up. Once we have this breather and we come back down and we form enough of a retracement, then I think we're going to see a nice push up back up to the upside. Euro AUD is a strange one. It's been a bit choppy, as you can see here, and we watched this last week bounce, open up in the market open, not give a chance for an entry, and push all the way back up to these highs. Since then we fell off and we're coming back down. We're hitting this support. This support it's a strong daily support. It's something we're going to be watching out for, but the Aussie dollar is something that I'm going to keep a close eye on this week, and I'm going to explain to you when we get to the Aussie dollar. However, I don't think that this is going to hold too strong just yet. I think that we're going to see Aussie dollar, Euro AUD push down a little bit lower. We are down around this sort of level here, where we may create this inverse head and shoulders. We're finding some support. I'm just going to make this a little bit clearer, guys. And we're finding some support here, as you can see. But I'm just going to keep an eye on it. I don't think there's anything for us there just yet. 4 hour, we've had a pullback. Could possibly be making a retracement here as well. We're hitting the 61.8%. And if we are going to reject this level, I think we're going to have a little bit of consolidation around here first, around this level, and see some price development. At the moment, I don't see anything too interesting there for us. Keeping a close eye on it, but it's been a bit choppy. If we just zoom out here on the 4 hour or on the daily chart, we can just see here that if I just get rid of the Fibonacci and some of these levels, just take that away, we can see here that we have in fact just been quite choppy, pushing up, pushing down, pushing up, pushing down, within this sort of triangle formation as well on the higher time frames. As you can see, trend line coming across the top, trend line coming across the bottom. So it's a bit of a choppy one. I think that we might just be consolidate and be a bit choppy in here. So I'm going to come back to that one later in the week. Euro NZD, Euro CAD, I'll come back to that one. Euro NZD is something that we've been looking at for quite some time. So Euro NZD, we've got the long trade on this from a long time ago. This is going back about 10 weeks now, from the very tip top up here, holding all the way down. Now last week, we're keeping a close eye on this. We can see here we've got this daily trend line coming across the top. We've got this long-term trend line here, then we've got the inner trend line here, and then let me just put that on here. You can see here daily trend line 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and then we've been coming up and been toying around and playing around with that sort of area all of last week. Now we've shown some bullish signs at times. The New Zealand dollar was quite choppy last week. We pushed up here, then we pushed back down. This looked like it could be a nice place to take an entry, but then we pushed back up, and as I explained last week, we sort of been on the daily chart, not really being able to push past this sort of previous resistance here. So keeping it really nice and clean at the moment, just so we can see price action. I'll even take that away. We can just watch here. This is what I've been watching coming into this level, but I've been hesitant yet, especially as it was the first week of the year, guys. We had quite a busy week last week with 4 or 5 trades. We have to remember it was the first week back. This week now, I expect even more volatility. You can see here, previous daily support, coming up, resistance. And it's been having a hard time trying to break through and trying to break higher. However, I do think that this is going to go. I do think this is going to break higher. I'm just waiting for the right time to take this trade. Now, at the moment, we can see here on a 4-hour chart, we can see we're just bouncing ahead of this resistance. And we've got this support, this trend line support, just a little bit lower. I'm going to be watching for this third touch on this trend line. I'm going to be watching for this to come down a little bit lower. It's given sort of signs that we could see. We've seen this nice doji pin that we could push up from here, but I think we may just either consolidate, or we're going to drop that down a little bit lower and push down to sort of this third touch of this trend line before we have that move up. My bias is for this to go to the upside. So what we are watching out for, guys, is a sort of a long opportunity this week. Just keeping a close eye on it. You can see here we may come back down to the 61.8% retracement level. You can see here we've hit it once here, form of support and resistance. We may come down, have one final push. We've got this whole sort of area of resistance and support here. that we're going to be watching out for. If price comes down into these levels, comes down into this Fibonacci retracement, we are going to be looking out for this. So set this up on your charts. We'll be watching out for this one. Coming down to anywhere, sort of any level around 1.6684, 80 or 80 to 90, which is here. Anywhere around these levels is going to be really nice, a really nice entry. So what we might see is a break of the counter trend line, which will bring people into thinking it's a break of the trend. But of course, we know that that is not the case. A break of the trend line does not mean a break of the trend, because where do we need to break in order to break this counter trend? We need to break and close lower than this point. So I think we may come down, make an equal higher low here, and if we do that, we may see a very, very nice entry for a long trade. But we need to be careful, because we have to remember, guys, that on the daily, we are short from the very, very top, but the daily is quite bearish still. Even though we've had this push up higher, you can see we've had a massive, we can see just by our trend lines, which I call the direction lines, we can just see here we're in a steep downtrend, yeah? So we can see that we are still in a downtrend, so we have to be careful. That's why I'm being patient here and just letting this develop and play out a little bit more. Remember, the more patient you are, you might think that you're missing something, but you're not. Price will just develop and show you a little bit more and a little bit more, and the next thing it will become really, really obvious, and we'll be able to take that trade. So watching for this to push down into sort of these regions here. A nice double bottom here would be really nice confirmation of that 61.8% retracement level. EuroCAD, that one's not working, so I've got this one. EuroCAD, so I was looking at this since last week. Very, very interested in EuroCAD. I like Canadian dollar pairs still to the upside. So let me just go to the weekly chart. We've been covering this one since last week. You can see here we're down at these sort of weekly levels. We're down at these weekly levels here. We know from last week that we're looking at this as we were trying to break out of the weekly trend line. We know that on the higher time frames, the weekly trend line, or on the higher time frames, the trend lines and supports and resistance are even stronger. So we've got a weekly trend line here. Price tried to break out, failed. On a weekly, pushed back up. Then last week, where we're looking for a possible push back up, we had a bit of a push up, we had a bit of a push down. Didn't really do much, but we had this doji candle and we closed it above the trend line. Daily, we look quite nice. Spike to the downside, spike to the downside, spike to the downside. So it looks like we might be seeing a nice push up to the upside here. You can see this sort of free rejection to the downside. Watching out for this one. This does interest me. Most Canadian dollar pairs do still interest me at the moment. But again, I'm watching this one and going to try and see how this develops around this sort of level here. We may run into some more resistance at the top of this range, but any pull down into here and then finding any support from these levels, guys, I think is going to be a very, very nice level to look at taking a long trade from. So again, being a little bit patient when the market opens to see what happens. We're running, we can see here we keep running into resistance. Gonna let the market play its hand first, make a move. We might see a spike to the upside, pull back down into this region. Maybe even a spike to the downside would be beautiful to try and take out these lows before a reversal. And then if we see that, we might see a beautiful long trade. So I will update and keep an eye on that. But that's another one to keep an eye out for. Euro Japanese yen, funny one. Japanese yen pairs, quite strange price action on some. But if you go back to Sniper Sundays 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I called the move up here, and then I said we'd move down. Now we did move down on the back of the US and Iran news, but then when the news was sort of reverted and it wasn't as bad as we thought, then we saw a push back up. But in general, we've seen the push back up, the push higher, like I explained I was expecting to see. Now we're coming back up into the region where I mentioned that I was going to be looking for short trades, and at the moment you can see what I just had on. We have a really nice sort of Fibonacci retracement level. As you can see here, we've made a double bottom off the trend line, bringing in longs now. Possible look at pushing back up to these levels. There is a chance that we could push up to this double top, but at the moment we've hit this 61.8%. and I'm going to be watching around this area to see how we continue to act here. We start finding some 4-hour resistance. We're sort of just moving sideways now, but we're going to keep an eye on this one. Daily, we have a little bit of bullish momentum behind us. We could possibly come up and make a sort of right shoulder, or make a third touch of this, and make a triple top. And from here, then I think we might see a really nice sell-off and a nice short trade longer term. But at the moment, we are quite bullish still. We have to remember daily, think about on the bigger picture of what's happening. Daily, higher high, high low, higher high. So we are in a daily uptrend. So this is why I think that this still could push up higher. I might be too early to be looking at taking a short trade just yet. So with this daily trend, daily uptrend, bullish trend, we can see that price is pushing up higher and pushing up higher. And if we come up here and fail to make a new higher high, so we tried to make a higher, we made a higher high here, came down, couldn't make it push up higher, came down. If we can't break up higher than there, then we may see an opportunity down. But that's not really on our agenda too much at the moment. I'm going to flick through some of these other pairs, guys, and then I'm going to get to the ones where I'm looking at us possibly taking trades. So we have a few setups pending on Euro USD. We know Euro NZD that we're looking out for. We're looking out on that one. Euro CAD is quite interesting to us. So GBP USD, GBP USD has been quite choppy, guys. It hasn't really done too much. Now I still do favour GBP USD to have a bit of downside before a move up. But at the moment, you can see quite clearly we're in a bit of a triangle formation. And from here, I'm expecting a push up. There's nothing really for us on GBP USD at the moment. Expecting to move up into sort of these regions, and then it'll be interesting for a possible move down. At the moment, we are in short territory. We can see here we've had this big push down, we've pushed up. Now we're making lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. I think we're going to come back up and make a lower high. Maybe retap this last resistance here, or in this resistance area, and then we can be looking at taking a short trade down. At the moment, and there's nothing for us just yet. GBP JPY is a similar situation, but however, with the Japanese yen, I am eyeing up possible short trades. So we're going to be watching at how this pair continues to act. You can see here that we've just broken out of the resistance, but to be honest, guys, like here, we've broken out this resistance. I mentioned last week that I was expecting a double top, and we might be looking for a short trade, but it's too choppy. There's nothing really that's sticking out to me too much on this trade at the moment. We're seeing a bit of choppiness. I think we need to just let this develop and show us a little bit more. Nothing's sticking out too much. We are in short territory. As I said, we've seen this big move down from the highs. So overall, at the moment, I do prefer short trades on this. I wouldn't be looking at taking any long trades. That's the sort of recommendation I can give. But I'm just waiting for something better to happen in order to look at taking that short trade. I think we could come down to around 140, come down on pound pairs, and once we come down lower, I think then we could see a push up higher. So basically, we're waiting for a little bit more to happen. You can see here on the daily chart as well. This just sort of reiterates what I mean. The last 2 days on this pair, doji candle, not really giving us much on what it wants to do. So we need to let the market open and see what's going to happen. Let it make a few moves first, possibly push up higher, come up into sort of these regions. I'm sure that something more obvious will sort of start to stand out for us. Maybe come up and tap this last lower high. So remember, we've got this move down, lower high, swing lower high, equal lower low, or just created a lower low, come back up, equal lower high, something around these levels would be a nice area to look at taking a short trade. GBP CAD, so obviously I'm looking at for like a short-term little push up on GBP pairs, just like last week, and I like the weakness on Canadian dollar pairs as well. So I'm still keeping an eye out on this GBP CAD pair. Doji candles galore all last week, so stayed away from it. You can see doji candle, and Friday doji candle. So all week, just moving sideways, not really knowing what it wants to do. When pairs are doing that, it means it's ranging. So we can see, we can just add on this little sort of range here. And I'm not going to touch this just yet. I think we might have a little spike to the downside, or we could have some sort of movement happen before the real move happens. We've got this little triangle formation here. We know that when we're in a triangle formation, price loves to make a fake out first. So we could see a fake out to the upside, fake out to the downside, and then a bigger move happen. But you can see here, we're just at a stalemate, just doji candles, indecisive in the market, so we're staying away from that at the moment. GBP AUD is a pair that I do like to as a short trade. We've been looking at this since last week. Let me clear this up a little bit. And we started the move down at the end of last week. Now, we pushed all the way up into that level, called the push up from Sniper Sundays from around here, pushed up into here, tapped that right shoulder perfectly, tweezed the top of the dailies, looking good, pushed down, nice daily bearish engulfing. Now, this is one of the ones I'm looking out for the most next week. I think we're going to get a really nice short trade on this. Here on the 4 hour, you can just see we just ended with a bit of support. I'm looking for a push up into this region once more, and any push up in this region and then any resistance from this level, I think we could see a second wave and a big wave of short selling coming into the market. So not only have we got this Fibonacci here, and this will show you how Fibonacci can be used more than once on a pair. So at the moment, you can see Fibonacci, we've hit this 50% retracement. If I just clear this resistance area to make it a bit more clearer, you can see here we've got this 50% retracement level that we've got here. And if we take a Fibonacci, we can also go from this high, and if this does become the low, we can also add a Fibonacci on the lower time frames. So we could see a retracement here, back up to 50, 61.8%, and then we could see a nice push back down. So keep an eye out for GBP AUD. I'm looking for all GBP pairs, just like last week, to have a little push up to the upside. Once you see a little push up to the upside, then I think they could be primed for a nice short. So keep an eye out for that, and keep an eye out for this GBP AUD trade. We could see a nice little push back up sort of into this region, test this area one more time, and then bang, off we go down to the downside. USD JPY, I'm not too interested in this one, as you know, guys. At the moment, we did see a sell-off, and then lots of this action, manipulative price action around the news. Obviously, US dollar and the Japanese yen, highly influenced by news like the war news from US and Iran. At the moment, I do think that we can still come up and tap that 110 level. It's just above us. I think it needs to be hit. So until that happens, I'm staying away. But we could see a nice hit, a nice push up onto that level. And once we hit that level, we could see a nice push down. But until we get that level, I'm not looking at this too much at the moment. USD CAD trade that we took last week. As I mentioned, we had a really nice trade on this. Sniper entry down at the bottom. So I think it was anywhere between 75 and 80. And then we had a nice tight stop loss of 55. So it came close to our stop loss. But our stop losses have been perfect last week. I'll run over actually one thing on stop losses for you guys once again, and anyone new people in the group about having to add the spread on. I'll do that at the end. But you can see here, we had a push up. We took profit at 1.5%, but then we did go on to push up and go to our sort of target, which would have been this trend line. Obviously not the very top, but yeah, a nice sort of 1 to 3, 1 to 4 risk reward. We did take profit early because of the news. I'm still happy that I did, because this could have easily come back down and made a spike to the downside. But we did take a 1.5% profit on this one, so it was a nice trade last week. But at the moment, USD CAD had a nice push up. You can see here on the daily, we've hit this daily resistance, shooting star, doji candle. I think this shows that the bulls are starting to slow down. What we may see here is a push back down into sort of this region, and I think we're going to see a second wave of longs. So at the moment, we're seeing some weakness on the US dollar, as explained. Seeing some weakness on the US dollar here. We have to monitor how weak that's going to be, but I'd expect this to come down into this region, maybe tap the top of this range at here, or come down and tap this 61.8% retracement level. I'm looking for USD CAD to come down, and once we get into these regions, that second wave of long and buying pressure will come into the market. I think we could be looking at a nice long trade. So looking at sort of Euro CAD, USD CAD, GBP CAD, looking for possible pushes down and then a nice long trade up. But once we get into those levels, we have to keep an eye on how price action is forming. Just make sure, because the US dollar could continue to weaken. But at the moment, we've got a nice sort of setup there on a daily. Nice 4 hour bullish move. Once that has a bit of a retracement, it pulls back down. we can see whether this bullish move is going to continue and go back up to the upside or not. So watching out for those ones. Aussie dollar is a strange one. So we've had this push down, break of the trend line, really bearish into this consolidation zone, and now we've had this push up. This push up here should push USD CAD down a little bit further. And what I think is going to happen here, guys, is that on the market open, I think we're going to see Aussie dollar push a little bit higher, push up into sort of these regions, like Euro USD, like GBP USD, because of the US dollar factor, because of the US dollar getting weaker. I think pairs, as I said, like the Euro USD is going to push up a little bit higher. GBP USD is going to push up a little bit higher. That's now working again. There we go. Yeah, so I think GBP USD is going to push up higher. And Aussie dollar, I think we're going to see a little more, a little push back up to around this 0.6930. That support we were resting on last week, and it broke through, broke the trend line, hit this weekly support. Now I think we're going to extend this up slightly. When we get to here, I will be watching this pair for then taking short trades and back down, and then come into that sort of outer trend line to make that third touch on the trend line. Again, similar to the Euro US dollar, I'm going to be watching this to come back, then come back out and tap the outer trend lines. So again, short-term bullishness, and then medium-term short trade, and then possible long-term bullishness. But I do like the Aussie dollar, this bullish daily move that we can see here. On the daily chart, we're quite bullish. Big push up, down, big push up, down. But I think that before we have the next push up, I think we might just be having a little push up here, head and shoulders, then a bigger push down, so we have a bigger retracement, and then from there, what we can see is a retracement. We are retracing off this 61.8% nicely. So because we are in a daily bullish trend here, this is why we have to monitor this and see how this is going to react once it gets to these levels. But I think that as we haven't hit this outer trend line, for the next bigger move higher, I still think that there's more room to the downside. I think there's more twists and turns in the US dollar. We could push up from here, as you see, we have this really nice 61.8% retracement on the daily Fibonacci. You can see here higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher high, came down, made a higher low, stayed above this level. So we could well see a nicer push up to the upside. But at the moment, I'm keeping an eye on this. I would like to see Aussie dollar come down to take a longer term buy from these levels. And we saw this big push down, and this is why I still think that we have a bit more room to the downside. Is because even though we have really nice signs of it pushing up, remember, this was quite a steep push down. We've had one bullish day, but I don't think that that will be enough to completely turn this around. I still think that there's a little bit more play to the downside. This might be bringing in some long buyers and to get liquidity to make that next push down. And once we get to sort of these regions here, then we might have this higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low on the daily time frame, and then a higher high. So looking out for this to come up to sort of these regions here. And once we get to these regions, I'll be looking at possible short trades down. Aussie dollar CAD was one we've been watching out, looking out for last week. Obviously, I'll keep mentioning the Canadian dollar. So this is another one that I'm looking at. Aussie dollar CAD, I think that we've had this bullish move up last week. Again, Aussie dollar making a bullish move. However, we're hitting the back of this trend line. I'm not rushing with this one just yet. I think that we could still see, we've had this initial push up higher. Now that we've had this initial push and a sign that we might be changing the direction, I'm going to be patient for this one to sort of push back down into these regions. I think we could come down to this 50% level, 61.8%, and then we'll have a bigger push. But we need to watch how the market opens up on this one. Again, some of these are ideas, guys, that we're going to be watching out for, and I'll be watching for us, and we'll be updating. I'm not going to go into way too much detail. Obviously, as the price develops, and if we're to take the trade, then I can break it down completely for us. USD Swiss, another one, choppy. We came down, found that support, had some US dollar bullishness last week that we're looking for. End of the week, found some bearishness coming into the market. Again, US dollar, I think we're going to see a sell-off for the moment. Even star formation here. but I don't think it's going to be the biggest sell-off. The biggest sell-off. I think we could come down again into these regions. I think we're going to come down, push into sort of these levels, and from here, I think we could see a nice push up. So I'm basically expecting the US dollar to push down, but I don't think we're going to push down all the way here. I'm looking at the US dollar possibly pushing down into sort of these regions, making a Fibonacci retracement. Let's just take this level here, for instance, and then from these levels, I'll be looking to see if it finds some support to then push up higher. So we need to be aware that even though we might see the US dollar weaken, I don't think it's going to be long term. I think we might just short term see some weakness on the US dollar short term, and then we'll be looking at buying the US dollar. That's why we're going to be looking at short term. We're looking at Euro USD to the upside, and then we're going to be looking at buying the US dollar and selling the Euro US dollar and pushing this back down. So yeah, that's what I see for USD Swiss. NZD USD. NZD again is another tricky one. Playing around a little bit last week. Hopefully a bit more momentum this week. I still think we're going to see a little push up on NZD, back up to 61.8% retracement before rolling over to the downside. In general, I think NZD is going to go down lower. It's going to move down lower. But you can see now how this Fibonacci is starting to line up perfectly. Not only do we have a perfect 61.8% retracement in line with the 0.6700 weekly resistance, but then if we do tap that, then the daily Fibonacci, the extensions would work out perfect. We've got the first extension in line with the previous higher low, and the next touch on the trend line, third touch on the trend line, and then should we break that, we can come down and tap the second extension, which is in line with 0.6500, which is the weekly support. So I do see a little push up on NZD first. You can see here, if I just adjust that, how it almost lines up nearly perfectly here. And it's amazing how Fibonacci can play out to the T. So here I do expect short-term NZD USD bullishness, a little bit likewise with Aussie dollar, short-term bullishness and then a sell-off. Expecting NZD short-term bullishness and then a sell-off. Same with NZD JPY. Remember we were covering this last year. Keeping an eye on this one. Nice and clean trend line 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. This is one I'm going to be watching closely. 4 hour, we can see here we've had a push up. We've got this really nice head and shoulders formation forming here. We also have this Fibonacci pulling back here, 61.8% once, 61.8% twice. We are now forming a sort of tweezer top here, double top. Loads of conferences are starting to line up here for NZD JPY. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye. This is actually one of my favorites to keep an eye out on for next week. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on NZD JPY from around these levels. But what I'm watching out for, as I said, I mentioned Japanese yen pairs look like we could see a little bit of a sell-off. But I'm watching out for a possible little push up higher. Like I mentioned with GBP JPY. Let me just see where is JPY. We might see a little push up higher before we sell off. Just like I mentioned with USD JPY, we might see a little bit of a push up before we sell off. And also, if I can find it amongst all these pairs that we're looking at, Euro JPY, looking for a little push up before we sell off. I think that we may also see the same with NZD JPY. I think we might have a little push up with the New Zealand dollar and then see a sell off. So keeping an eye on NZD JPY. Keep that one on your charts, guys. I'm going to be watching that one. But also that also comes into play with Euro NZD. So I'm expecting NZD to have a little short-term bullishness. Then obviously, what are we going to expect on Euro NZD? Short-term bearishness and a short-term push down. So this could all work out and combine together. We might see a little push down first on this, and then a really nice push up. Beautiful long trade lining up there. Also, New Zealand dollar pairs, we see a nice little push up with NZD USD. You can see here the New Zealand dollar could line up for a perfect short trade down. NZD JPY could line up for a perfect short trade here, and NZD CAD watching for possible short-term bullishness here, expecting CAD up to the upside. If we see, we were looking at this pair last week, unfortunately got stopped out with that news that came out, hit us by about 15 pips, manipulation galore there, came down and then the news more or less reversed. We went back up to the upside. Then we were 1% profit, and then it pulled back down on the Friday. We're ranging here at the moment, but I think we could have a little push up to the upside. But as you can see here, I'm going to be watching with most CAD pairs, like I showed you on Euro CAD, GBP CAD, and USD CAD. They're all in a range like this. I've highlighted a range like this on all the Canadian dollar pairs. So I'm going to be watching these pairs, seeing if they develop, see if I get a little push to the downside first, see if we get a push or break up and then a retest. Just watching the development around these areas for the Canadian dollar pairs. But I do see this pair pushing up to the upside, short term at least, with that New Zealand dollar and Canadian dollar weakness and the New Zealand dollar strength. And then from here, we might see a nicer roll over to the downside. You can also already see what's lining up here. We just come across here, resistance, we could come up here, hit resistance, coming in line with around 0.8700 even, see this sort of area, and then we can see a nice push down. So loads to look out for, guys, loads and loads and loads. Remember, last week was just the first week, first week of the year, first week of January. Said January's going to be busy, but we took 5 trades in the first week. 2 profits, 1 was at break even, 1 was a loss, mainly just because that news broke and the market went a bit wild, and so there's nothing we could do about that. And then the other trade we've got long at the moment, and we're in profit on Euro USD. US dollar, they said this is what I'm sort of looking at, eyeing up at the US dollar pushing down lower. And gold, I'm watching this very, very carefully, watching for gold to push up into this level, find some resistance from these levels here. We could be looking at a nice short trade. However, news, fundamentals, everything could change, and it could change this at any time. So just keeping a close eye on this one for the moment. We could even see a little push down and then a push back up higher. We could see a little push down to kind of hit a level like this. So from these levels first, we could bring in some short sellers down into this level. Then we could push up higher and then down. Lots and lots and lots to come from. But in general, I would like to see a little push up here on gold at the moment, and then a roll over to the downside, which I think is coming. And when it does come, I think it will be fast. Oil is one I'm watching as well quite closely for this week. We've had a breakout of this inner trend line, sharp sell-off. Haven't had much of a recovery. We've got this outer trend line here, just a little bit lower. I think we're just going to see this possibly consolidate and come over, or drop lower and tap this outer trend line before we see a move up. I think we're going to see, what I'm basically projecting on oil is that we are going to see a little bit of a push up from these levels. But from these levels here, we can see a nice short down. So I'm watching to see if we can get that long. We can get that long trade up. I'm looking for it. But at the moment, where we're so close to this outer trend, or this outer trend line here, here would be a dangerous place to look at taking a buy or a long trade, because we could easily just slip over, roll over one more time out to this level. But then from here would be a prime area to push up and see a price push back up into these sort of regions, forming this Fibonacci retracement, hitting one of these Fibonacci retracement levels, for instance 650, 61.8%, and then let's see a bigger sell-off after that. But if we can get this long trade, I am looking for it, actively looking for it, and see if it's a possibility, but it's not on the cards just yet. So as you can see here, we know that price is like a magnet to these trend lines. At the moment, we're in no man's land. We've broken one, and we're so close to the other one that personally, I would always wait until we reach that trend line, because price works off trend lines and support and resistance. Price comes out here, finds support, it's going to bounce off that and push off, or we're going to see price move in either direction. At the moment, what I've explained and what we've often seen is if price is close to a trend line, we could just possibly see some consolidation till it hits this. But with the weight of the bears on the oil at the moment, we could just see one more push to the downside, tap this daily trend line, and then we could see a nice push up to the upside. So keeping an eye out for that one. One of many things to look at, guys. So as last week, loads and loads to look at. We'll be updating you as soon as the market opens. Let's see what the market has to bring. As I said, quick look at the fundamental calendar. Monday's quite quiet, a bit Canadian dollar news and New Zealand dollar news. Tuesday, we have a bit of US dollar news, CPI. Wednesday, we've got some news for the pound. pound news coming out, but nothing really much else. Thursday, some euro and US dollar news, and then Friday we've got some euro China news. But again, nothing massive. Friday's quite a big one, retail sales in the UK. To see how that goes, and how that affects the economy. But yeah, keep an eye out on all of these pairs, guys. Mark them up, get them ready. We'll be watching the market very, very closely from market open. We'll see. We had a busy Monday or busy start to the week last week, so let's see if it starts off like that again this week. But that's sort of what we're looking at for on all of these pairs. And as I said, I'll be keeping a close eye on them. And once we take a trade, I will be updating you. So let's see how the market opens and how Euro USD reacts from over the weekend. I will update on market open if we have any big movements. We'll see how Euro USD does, and I'll update you along the way. Have a great evening, guys. Looking forward to a great week. Second week in, looking to be busy, busier than last week. So let's get these pips. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.